on VOW FM 88.1. Giving you all you need to know in the world of business. The Business Buzz, Thursdays, 7 to 8 p.m.
That's right. The Business Buzz on Thursdays, 7 to 8 p.m. And we've just spoken about early childhood development centers. And now it is time for Innovation Insights. And we are discussing how to survive January financially as a business owner. Now, January is generally a difficult month to tackle, whether as an individual or a business owner, because we navigate the post-holiday period from budget constraints to cash flow challenges, as well as then preparing for the upcoming tax season. It may all be a little overwhelming for you, but fortunately, we do have a solution. Today, we are going to share insights on how to plan better for this time of the year. And we have a seasoned finance professional and business builder, Lesukhisha Mtiane. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, guys. It's absolutely an honor on my part. Thank you for that.
So you know that part of planning, because now we are talking about planning for the new year, managing cash flow and budgets after the festive season. And that often involves reflection on the previous year, trends and performance. That's where it all starts. So how can one effectively track the previous year's performance and use that data to plan and make better business decisions right at the beginning of the year, because we want to do it right?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And that's a very good question. One I encounter often. I think one of the things that you'd want to do essentially is to do the planning long before this period arrives, because I mean, already today is the 18th of Jan, so you pretty much have gone through the majority of Jan. So your planning should start a lot earlier. And I normally like to use the seasons. I mean, as you'd know, we follow the agrarian calendar here in South Africa and most of the world. And that's mostly a Northern Hemisphere type calendar. So for them, they're in the winter. And the mindset that you should have is throughout the year, say to yourself, if I was in the Northern Hemisphere, so Europe and all those places, the winter is coming. So let me store some reserves. And essentially this period, December, Jan, maybe even a bit of Feb, you find yourself in a position where you've put away reserves. And what to us is normally winter, which is July, June, July. So you don't see a lot of people complaining about their finances around the June, July area, meaning that we actually do a lot of good planning around the winter period. We essentially should assimilate that and be in a position where come December, January, we have stored away enough reserves to carry us through the festive season, because business stops on the 16th of December. So you have to carry your business through December, through November, through January, with your November invoices that you would have collected on, hopefully by the 16th of December. So it starts long before that.
Mm. And of course, a lot of people also do get paid on the 16th of December and then again on at the end of January. So that lack of buying power then, makes January a slower month in most industries, which can then affect sales, right? But what's the best way to strengthen my business strategy in order to manage cash flow in January?
Yeah. So for things like that, for example, so you'll see a lot of items going on special early Jan, for example, to basically take advantage of a lot of those, any cash that's still remaining those early weeks of January. What maybe you can do is look to even take deposits for some of your items that you provide in Jan. So give your customers the option to pay in advance, that sort of a thing. And essentially you take a cash-rich situation for them in December, and you sort of make it some form of income received in advance for you. Then you have to make sure in your business, you don't go and have the type of December that you would have had otherwise.
There's another part of running a business that we often neglect, and that's, just managing, staying motivated and keeping your own mental health in check. But do you have any strategies that one can use to stay motivated and committed, especially in slower months, just for themselves as the business owner as well as employees?
Yeah, definitely. Normally for the business owner, I would say, and a lot of the times as a business owner, you would know that a lot of it is a lot of you time and a lot of work that you put in. So one of my favorite go-tos is keeping a journal, right? So for this period, for example, I would have, if I can show my journal, I'd essentially have something this big or even smaller, but I've got like 3, 4 journals here on my desk. And around this period, you essentially go internally and you're observing a lot. I can tell you now, it's in our nature as entrepreneurs that when things go wrong or when things go slow, we would like to turbocharge them, we would like to fix those sort of things. I normally say these periods are actually a time to see if all the systems that you've built are working. So I normally would take a journal and I would just observe. And all the ideas that I have, all the insights that I'm gaining, looking at how my employees are treating my customers, how they respond to the scarcity that seems to be there around this period. That is all free psychology. That's all free research. And I write it down. You write it down, you write it down. Think about it. Don't yet discuss it, I would say. Keep it in your journal format and closer towards the end of Jan with your networks, with your business partners, your mentors, your coaches, that sort of a thing. Start getting together and then go through some of the observations that you'd have made during this period and how to effectively climb out of this period. Don't be too quick to change certain things because you may miss out on valuable feedback from what you have been building throughout the period. So I think keeping a journal is right up there in terms of the list of things to do. I don't want to add too much to that because before you know it, you've got 5, 6 things that you have to do, and you do none of them. I think for the coming year, if you can just always have with you that, listen, whenever I'm going through tough times, that's not the time to make decisions. That's the time to actually take down notes and survive those tough times. And then once I've exited the tough times, that is an opportunity to now reflect what isn't working that gets masked by good times.
I absolutely love the journaling. That's not even something, that I had thought of in the way that you have explained it, because, we were speaking of reflection, and journaling is a very good way to keep track of that, because lessons that you learn in January are lessons that you won't learn at any other time of the year. So is this a journal that you keep, for example, for a full month and compare it year to year?
So, first of all, there are insights to be gleaned literally just from seeing your business from that observation um, of type of experience, right? Throughout the year, you know how hectic it gets in your business. So, if it's something that you're comparing to last year, what has been happening the previous 11 months? Ideally, you would want it to be a process that you're going through on its own. So you're comparing it to how you thought your business would was doing. You're comparing it to how the year felt. You're comparing it to some of the things that throughout the year there are certain niggles that would have come to you that you would have been wondering, is this working as well as I thought it is? Now is the time to see that. I'll give you my favorite one. My favorite one is clients, right? You do all this work for clients throughout the year, and then come this period, you issue invoices, and they don't necessarily respond to those invoices. Now is the time to start seeing, okay, during the year, my collection period was 30 days, 40 days, that sort of a thing, and it was predictable. Around this time, I expect the same turnaround period, but that's not the case. And which of the clients are the ones that are communicating, sorry, can I pay you a week later than I normally would, that sort of a thing. And which are the clients that are completely quiet but come back to pay versus the clients that are completely quiet and then don't pay at all. So you basically kind of comparing it to the practice that you've had throughout the year that has made you, I'd say, somewhat complacent, but you also comparing it to now that I know what this period feels like, what's the best version of my business that I'd like? And then you basically see how far off you are. What the journaling helps with is actually writing down things for what they are. Because oftentimes we think these things through as business owners, we patch gaps, we patch loopholes, and we don't ever get a fair sense of what the business is actually like today. We're optimistic, so we see problems as challenges and opportunities to grow. But if you write it down that the roof was leaking, then at least when you're now in a lot of a more comfortable position, you can actually fix the problem for what it is and not with your optimistic glasses.
Sure, I absolutely love that. And speaking of challenges, one challenge that, a lot of small business owners do have, and I mentioned this because obviously tax season is
Yeah.
approaching. So it's important that we discuss this because it's something that's so often overlooked. Due to the fact that when you're starting out, maybe you don't have the resources, maybe you don't have the knowledge, maybe you don't know the importance of filing your taxes and what the consequences of not doing so could be. So I want to ask you, what compliance requirements should any business owner be aware of and prioritize during the approaching tax year end?
Yeah. So specifically for tax year end, you're looking at your financial statements being finalized. November, December is the preceding tax period, but you VAT period for most businesses. You actually are going to find yourself in March with the Jan Feb VAT invoice as well, or VAT obligation from SARS. You also have provisional tax that is coming in for the end of Feb. And I saw SARS, I think, said the tax filing season ends 24 Jan for provisional tax payment. Then you still have your normal PAYE. So this period is basically the Champions League of business problems. Now, coming to what would be your best ally, and without giving too much of my business and what we would be helping our clients with, one of your best friends when it comes to SARS and when it comes to how you run your business, make sure that you've been keeping invoices, make sure that you've been keeping receipts. At the end of the day, when we talk financial statements and we talk submission of documentation to SARS, we're talking a reconciliation of those invoices, of those receipts for things you've paid for and for things that you've received money for. The one thing that SARS is always going to hit you with for all of these different types of taxes, they're just going to say provide supporting documentation. And if your business is being run from a bank statement, which is cash flow, because oftentimes when you're the owner of a business, the main thing that matters to you is, am I able to pay? Am I able to pay employees? Am I able to pay my suppliers? Am I able to pay SARS in this case? And we forget about the necessity or the obligation to keep these supporting documentation as well. When SARS comes for you, they're not going to come for you because you failed to pay your obligation. They're going to come for you because you have failed to keep supporting documentation. And so your best friend when it comes to preparing for compliance and being compliant is to make sure that at all times you're comfortable that the money that's in your bank account, you can account for all the invoices and receipts that you have from the invoices you've issued. And that explains why you have that money. And the money that you've spent, make sure that you've got all the invoices from your suppliers for that money. So that's one very important one. The second one that I'll just touch on, and I'll leave it at just these two for this conversation, is actually the compliance of your documentation. So what we're seeing for, especially with VAT, you find that you are keeping the invoices and all of them are there, they filed correctly, they're named, they're dated, but simple things like the invoice writing on at the top, the tax invoice, the invoice having the split between the amounts excluding VAT, the VAT amount, and the amount including VAT. Those are small compliance factors that SARS looks at and can easily throw you out if you found wanting in that regard. So those are the things that during this period, I think you'd kick yourself in the foot if you found that those little things have not been done throughout the year. And now basically you're having a nightmarish Jan, Feb, and possibly even March.
Well, business owners wear many hats. You start out as the sales and marketing person, advertising, receptionist, HR. You're hiring, but you definitely cannot do it all because you just aren't qualified to do it all. So then, speaking still of tax year end and VAT, how can I assess the effectiveness and reliability of an accountant whose services I wish to pursue, or my current accountant? Is there a board, that is there a practice number that they use that we can check against a certain board to avoid being scammed or just doing the wrong things and being on the wrong side of the law?
Yeah. And you touch on multiple factors there. So the first one is the scamming issue, right? For scamming, normally you just check which professional body your accountant is registered with. Is it SICA, which is for chartered accountants? Is it SIBA, which is for business accountants? Or is it SIPA, which is for professional accountants? Three bodies that essentially do the same thing. Normally, then you would have a membership number from one of them, and then you can always go through those professional bodies' websites, and there you'll be able to check the membership number. All right. Once we move from there, and I think that's probably where you find a lot more of the challenges. I don't think there are very many people that would be faking accounting qualifications.
We would hope not, yeah.
Yeah, it would be quite a boring qualification perhaps to fake. But where normally it affects you the most is, are they doing the correct thing? So I've been paying all this money throughout the year for your services. Now come crunch period, I'm non-compliant. Not only am I non-compliant, I'm incurring penalties. And not only am I incurring penalties, factually my business is actually struggling, but I'm ending up with a tax bill, which implies that, remember, if a business is making a loss, then theoretically they're not due to pay any taxes, right? So you find that the picture of the business is not speaking to the reality of what SARS is saying is the state of your business. Those are some of the red flags that almost give you a hint that maybe my accountant is not on top of things. But without bashing accountants too much, look, the fact that as a business owner you wear many hats, that's the territory, right? So it actually starts with you first. An accountant, even though they're specialized in what they do, at the end of the day, when you insource them, they're still a resource at your disposal as the business owner. So the biggest tool that you have for measuring the effectiveness of your accountant, first of all, is you knowing the business very well. So if you've got procedures at the end of the week that you sit down with your admin or your secretary or um, filing person, and you say to them, listen, I'd like a reconciliation of all the incomes and all the expenses, and basically reconcile that to my bank account. That gives you a handle on your business. So when your accountant then files your VAT, for example, you have a rough idea that the number that they're saying to SARS is your revenue is essentially correct. If you don't have a handle on that number, or you don't have a handle on how well your business is doing and where all the documentation is and how to retrieve it, it becomes very difficult to then pick up that your accountant is or isn't doing a good job. When you look at some of the fees that are charged by accountants in the space, bookkeeping, that sort of thing, look, this is where business owners are gonna hate me, but unfortunately, they're still very low. I'm seeing that you actually are getting the product that you're paying for. In that situation, it then becomes on you to fortify and make their job easier, because there's nothing you want less than an accountant is doing your work in the last week of tax filing, which is a red flag. But even in that situation, your staff is disorganized. So when they ask you for invoices, you essentially are giving them a box or a file that you yourself do not have a handle on. It's not sorted. You don't even know half the invoices that are in there. You're unable to speak to the numbers that they're actually going to submit on your behalf to SARS. So when such a situation occurs, I often say you, the business owner, need to introspect, because the quality of your accountant is only going to be as good as the quality of the handle that you have on your business. So those are some of the telltales. If you see yourselves talking two different languages, or you find that your stuff are always urgent, being filed at the last minute, those are sort of signs that, listen, my accounting and compliance function is not where I'd like it to be.
Thank you so much for giving us your insights today. Very informative. And you know, the key things that I took away from that is that obviously you can't start planning for January in January. You must do that months in advance, and you can do that by keeping a journal. But then you must also keep invoices from all your suppliers and compliance of documentation. So thank you so much, Lesukhisha Mtliana, for joining us today. And I hope that was very useful to you as a business owner, just so that you are well prepared for next January and you don't get caught off guard. It is 4 minutes now, 3 minutes until the end of the business buzz. So that is how we wrap it up for this week. Time went by very quickly today. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to interact with us on our social media pages, VOW FM on Facebook, at VOW FM on X. And then, of course, you can search for our podcasts on www.wits.journalism.co.za/business. Thank you so much to our producers once again, Gwynch and Segunjalo. You know, we are going to do it bigger and better this year. Thank you for being the team behind all of this. And don't miss the Business Buzz, same time next week for more insights into the world of business. From me, Ntando Shabalala, have a good evening.
You've been